Every story has three sides: yours, theirs, and the truth somewhere in between. Tonight, we're following a trail of breadcrumbs back to a tale you think you know. But what if I told you that the story of Hansel and Gretel isn't about candy houses and happy endings? What if the real story is about something far more terrifying and far more human? This is where the story gets interesting. We all know the version. Two children, abandoned in a dark forest, discover a house made of gingerbread and candy. They're captured by a wicked witch who plans to eat them. The clever sister outsmarts the witch, pushing her into her own oven. The children escape with treasure and live happily ever after. Sweet, simple, safe. Yet for over 200 years, this tale has endured. Children beg to hear it again and again, despite its dark themes. Parents continue to tell it, despite its disturbing imagery. Why? What is it about this story that refuses to be forgotten? The answer lies not in what the Brothers Grimm wrote down in 1812, but in what they chose to leave out. The real story begins not with fairy tale magic, but with historical fact. Let's travel back to medieval Germany, to a time when the line between survival and starvation was as thin as morning frost. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 swept across Europe like a tide of despair. For 3 consecutive years, crops failed, livestock died, rain drowned the land, then drought cracked it. Bread became a memory, hope became a luxury, and in that void, people changed. Contemporary chronicles tell us that parents abandoned children along forest roads, that desperate families sent their young ones away, promising to return, but knowing they never would. Some accounts whisper of darker things, of bodies unearthed, of flesh not wasted. Whether these whispers were true or simply warnings, we cannot know for certain. But we do know this: in such a world, a candy house in the woods isn't a dream, it's bait. Now let's return to our story with new eyes. A father sits beside a fire that barely warms his bones. Outside, snow falls like ash from a ruined sky. His wife speaks the words that will haunt him forever. The children, we cannot feed them. They are our blood, he protests. And they will be our death, she answers. The real story gets dark here. Young Hansel overhears their plan. He doesn't cry, he doesn't scream. Instead, he creeps outside under moonlight and fills his pockets with white stones, smooth and shining like tiny moons. The next morning, they walk deep into the forest, past trees that groan like grieving giants. When his stepmother says, "Wait here," and abandons them by a dying fire, Hansel drops the stones behind them. Why stones? Because breadcrumbs would not survive. Birds are always hungry too. That night, the stones lead them home. But hunger is a patient predator. It doesn't strike once and disappear. It returns, relentless and consuming. Soon, the cupboard is empty again. The children are led into the woods once more. This time, Hansel has only breadcrumbs. The forest has its own appetites. The crumbs vanish, stolen by birds, dissolved by dew, claimed by the earth itself. Night falls. They are lost. The truth is always stranger than fiction, and here's why. Historical records from the Great Famine period show that children often survived abandonment better than adults expected. They were resourceful, adaptable, and crucially, they knew how to find food sources adults had forgotten: wild berries, edible roots, tree bark in desperate times. Yet even the most resourceful child faces a terrible truth. Winter forest offers little mercy Then they see it, a house unlike any other, not made of stone or wood, but of sugar and spice, frosted eaves, candy-paneled walls, a rooftop of icing. Modern readers often dismiss this as pure fantasy, but what if I told you that such houses existed? Medieval confectioners, particularly in German regions, created elaborate sugar sculptures for wealthy patrons. Entire buildings crafted from hardened sugar, decorated with candied fruits and sweet ornaments. These weren't children's toys, they were displays of wealth and power. But by the time of the Great Famine, such luxuries had become obscene. A house made of food while children starved, it would have been seen as the ultimate corruption. The children do what any starving child would do. They eat. Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who's that nibbling at my house? The old woman appears, kind at first. She takes them in, feeds them, gives them warm beds. But the warmth is a lie. Hansel awakens in a cage. Gretel becomes a servant. Fatten him up, the witch croaks. We feast when he is plump. Here's where most retellings give us a cartoon villain, a cackling crone with a hooked nose and warty chin. The real story is far more disturbing. This woman isn't evil because she's magical. She's evil because she's human. She represents what people become when desperation erases morality, when hunger devours the soul. She doesn't kill because she's wicked. She kills because she's empty. And Gretel, young though she is, recognizes this truth. Each day, Gretel feeds her brother. Each day, the witch tests Hansel's finger for signs of fat. But clever Hansel offers a bone instead. The witch, half-blind from age and malnutrition, grows impatient. Today, she snaps, I shall feast. She orders Gretel to light the oven. Gretel obeys. The flames dance. The iron door glows red. Then comes the moment that defines the entire tale. The witch commands Gretel to crawl inside, to test the heat. Gretel pauses. The air smells of soot and sorrow. She turns. I don't know how, she says. Show me. The witch curses, crawls forward, and Gretel, trembling but ready, pushes her in. The iron door slams shut. Screams echo. Fire roars. The forest is silent again. What we discover in this moment transforms everything. Gretel doesn't defeat the witch through magic or divine intervention. She wins through intelligence, courage, and the terrible wisdom that comes from surviving abandonment. She's learned that adults can't always be trusted, that kindness can mask cruelty, that sometimes to survive, you must become what you never thought you could be. The witch represents more than individual evil. She embodies the corruption of the nurturing figure, the mother who should protect, but instead devours, the caregiver who feeds on those she should feed. When Gretel burns her, she doesn't just save her brother. She ends a cycle of consumption that has claimed countless others. The children search the witch's house. Beneath the sugar lies treasure, gold, jewels, and most disturbing of all, relics of children who came before. Shoes, toys, bones. They take what they can carry and flee into the forest. At a river too wide to cross, a great white duck appears. It carries them safely to the other side. This detail, the helpful duck, appears in most versions of the tale. Some scholars suggest it represents divine intervention, a sign that the children's ordeal has purified them. Others see it as nature itself, recognizing their worthiness to survive. But here's what I find most interesting. The duck appears only after they've saved themselves. Help comes not to the helpless, but to those who've already proven their strength. When they return home, the stepmother is gone, dead according to most versions, her presence simply erased. The father weeps when he sees his children. This time, he doesn't let them go. Yet the children have changed. They've walked through fire, literally and figuratively. They've seen what lies beneath sweetness. They know what the world does to the weak. The treasure they bring back isn't just gold and jewels. It's knowledge. The terrible, necessary knowledge of how to survive when everyone else has given up on you. The real story teaches us that evil isn't always supernatural. Sometimes it's systemic. Sometimes it's born from desperation and normalized by necessity. The witch doesn't emerge from nowhere. She's created by the same forces that drove the parents to abandon their children. She's what happens when the social contract breaks down completely. Yet the tale also shows us something hopeful. Even in the darkest circumstances, human ingenuity and courage can prevail. Children, despite their vulnerability, possess resources adults often underestimate: intelligence, adaptability, the ability to see clearly because they haven't yet learned to lie to themselves. Some stories are too important to forget. The tale of Hansel and Gretel survived because it serves as both comfort and warning. It comforts us by showing that the innocent can triumph over evil, that cleverness can overcome cruelty, that even the most dire circumstances can be survived. Yet it warns us about the conditions that create such circumstances, about what happens when society fails its most vulnerable members, about how quickly civilization can crumble when resources become scarce. The witch will always exist in some form. She appears whenever desperation trumps compassion, whenever adults begin to see children as burdens rather than blessings. And the trail of breadcrumbs? It reminds us that some paths, once taken, can never be retraced. Every story has three sides: yours, theirs, and the truth somewhere in between. Tonight, we've followed the breadcrumbs back to a tale that's far more complex than its surface suggests. The real Hansel and Gretel isn't about gingerbread houses or magical solutions. It's about what happens when the world turns its back on the innocent, about the terrible choices people make when survival is at stake. Yet even in its darkness, the story offers hope. It reminds us that even children, especially children, can find ways to navigate the deepest woods. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. The witch may burn, but she will rise again in new forms. The forest may be escaped, but it will always be there, waiting. And that's why we tell these stories, not to frighten, but to prepare, not to despair, but to remember. Because somewhere in the dark wood, another child is dropping stones behind them, hoping to find their way home. And as long as we remember their story, they never walk alone. History hides in plain sight. Sometimes, all we need to do is follow the trail. At Three Truths Project, we give voice to the forgotten, the twisted, and the true. Like, subscribe, and listen closely.